Hello, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. I'm Katie Searles. I'm editor at Internet Retailing, and I'm just going to give a short overview of our returns report, which was published earlier in the year. For those who don't know Internet Retailing, we cover the multi-channel retail experience on internetretailing.net. We have RetailX, which is our dedicated research arm. ConsumerX is our consumer survey, which we will harness in this report and this talk today. And then DeliveryX looks at that all-important post-purchase experience. So 2 years ago, we decided that it was time for a dedicated returns report. We were reporting on it day in, day out on the news site, and we thought we'd harness our research into the UK top 500 retailers and our consumer surveys to see where we're at with returns. The 2023 report was a reaction to Zara setting the precedent with charging for returns. It's something that we'll touch on later. This report, we're seeing that returns charging has become a lot more nuanced, and it's something we'll discuss. So, some context. Returns have been part of retail, no matter if it's D2C or if you have a bricks and mortar location. My first job in retail was with a company called Republic, who no longer exists, sadly. I worked in both the Edinburgh store and the Aberdeen store, and it was always fun on a Sunday morning when you got items back smelling like last night's fags. Or they'd washed them and then it smelled nice, but you knew it had been worn to the club and returned the next day. But if it was in good condition, of course, we could get back onto the shop floor pretty quickly. That's obviously something that's changed dramatically over the last few years. We're not saying that returns is just a D2C and e-commerce problem. It affects retailers with bricks and mortar sites, but also that growth in e-commerce, which is substantial, is leading to a growth in return numbers. The UK e-commerce sector is worth 4.2 billion last year. Any of that growth is sadly going to have a counter effect in the numbers of items coming back. E-commerce returns can be, for some companies, up to 30% of stock coming back. Unsurprisingly, a lot of that is fashion. We're seeing furniture, only about 7% of items are being returned. That could be down to people taking longer to decide, looking at stuff, going into shops, feeling stuff, or just because sending a sofa back is quite complicated. So, a startling figure that came out of this report is 75% of retailers now see returns as a necessary evil. This is something that's not going away. It's not something that's a quick fix, but it's something that can be handled and managed better. What's quite an interesting thing to come out of this report is 59% of the UK top 500 retailers are offering free delivery on everything. No minimum spend. So over half of retailers will allow you to get items delivered for free. Of course, this is because it incentivises spend initially. Also, retailers are likely to have full visibility of that delivery journey through their carrier partners. Starts to get a bit more complicated when items are coming back. 72% of the top 100 retailers advertise that they accept returns by post. If you have a store location, of course it can go back there. Some retailers allow that. But if you are a D2C offering, the only way to get it back is by postal or into a locker if you've got locker partnerships. And that complicates things because you don't have the same visibility. That return journey is in the hands of the consumer. I don't know if anybody in the audience is that person that leaves it for the full 30 days before rushing to their local convenience shop to send it back, or if you're all doing it on day dot when you realise that it doesn't work for you. That visibility and knowing, one, what state it's coming back in, two, when it's coming back, is completely in the hands of the consumer. but we are seeing retailers really starting to focus and use their data better to understand that returns journey. Whether that 30 days process will continue remains to be seen. But UK online shoppers posted back £4.1 billion worth of clothing last year. Knowing what the consumer's doing for the returns journey, as I've said, is very important. They're in control of it. So this report takes that consumer research to see what shoppers think of the returns journey. Unsurprisingly, 65.6% of consumers have sent purchases back within the last year. And all they want for that returns journey is for it to be easy. 70% of fashion returners have quoted that it was the wrong fit, and that's something that retailers can really start to think about and discuss and pull that data in and maybe look at their supply chain. 35% of consumers, though, have returned things because the cost of living crisis. They may have purchased something on a whim and that regret hits in and they're turning it back. So of course they want that refund quickly. What's considered easy for consumers is something that the retailers are having to guess at. We don't know what this easy returns process is, but it is very important to the consumers, with 67% of shoppers admitting that a returns policy impacts the trust that they have in that retailer and whether they're likely to shop with them again. If you have a bad returns experience, that's a customer lost. So as we can see from this chart, that returns process needs to be very easy. That's going to mean different things to different consumers. Is that using a locker? That's handy, and poster just there. Or is it a convenience store? Some luxury brands are trialling pick up from your house. That's a huge cost. Obviously the consumer is going to be delighted. You don't have to trot down to a shop, but I can't see that being rolled out by everybody. It also comes down to every part of the journey. 78% of shoppers want their packaging to be easy to resale if they're going to send it back. So even before something's arrived, they're thinking about sending it back. 32 within that 78% thinks the packaging is really important. So the big question, are they willing to pay for that packaging? Are they even considering how much resealable packaging costs? Only a small percentage are. Our research, our ConsumerX research, found only 24% of consumers are willing to pay for a return part of the journey, to have that $1.99, that $3.95 reduced from the returns fee. 35% admitted to never considering the cost of returns. We've seen pictures of discarded clothes on Ghana beaches. We've seen these images, but 35% of consumers, it's never even crossed their minds. They've got an item, they don't like it doesn't fit, it doesn't look like how it was described on the website. Of course they think they can send it back without thinking about how expensive reverse logistics actually is. There's a Trustpilot survey that we also use. We pull in third-party data as well as using our own. And it found that 58% of consumers would not shop with a retailer if they were charged. And that charge is maybe not apparent on the front end when you're shopping, when you're purchasing. No retailer is going to pop up on a banner, oh, by the way, if you're sending it back, it's going to cost you $3.95. So there's this trust element that has to come with it as well. And that same survey found 14% of Gen Z shoppers, which are a big part of the spenders, admitted at some point they've been a serial returner. They've purchased a jacket in 3 different colours, they've had to purchase multiple sizes, or they've simply purchased to have something photographed for social media to send back. And this is something that in this year's report we really started to see coming out as a trend. Serial returning, returns fraud, is something that retailers are really worried about. Items not received claims have increased by 35%. 32% of consumers admitted to filing a false returns item, saying that something was damaged so they could keep that item and get the refund. Unsurprisingly, 41% of UK retailers see returns fraud as one of the biggest challenges they face currently. And they're having to balance that, do we charge and lose a potential customer, with do we create a deterrent, i.e. charging, and save that sort of issue of returns frauds. What the change between last year's report and this year's reports is it's not just simple flat charge. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and a panelist suggested that all retailers should get together, pick a number and charge everybody. That's not going to work. Returning a blazer is not going to be as expensive as returning a luxury handbag. There's too much factors there. So we're seeing retailers start to think outside the box. ASOS announced that they will charge £3.95 for all items unless a customer keeps £40 worth of products. For their memberships, which is a loyalty scheme that has a fee of £9.95 annually, they only have to keep £15 worth of that order to get rid of the fee. This report highlights H&M are using their loyalty scheme. If you are a member of H&M's free loyalty programme, your returns remain free. So there is stuff that people can do that's quite interesting, and obviously with loyalty schemes comes data. An interesting way that we looked at in the report as well was Opoly. They've started a percentage scale. So if you order a bunch of stuff and return 50% of it, you'll be charged £2.99. If you send back between 90 and 100%, that goes up to £8.99. And they'll also flag you on their system as a serial returner. You will therefore not be allowed to return anymore until a process has been carried out and you're deemed okay again. It's using this data and understanding your customers and their returning patterns that could maybe help retailers work out if charging is for them, and if so, how much and when. There is maybe not good and bad returners, but there's certainly ones that are worth flagging, and a customer service element, a customer service opportunity here that retailers can look at, and if they can understand that better, maybe a flat charge isn't necessary. The reason why returns have really come to the forefront and why we're starting to talk about charging sort of deterrents is not just that returns are hitting retailers' bottom line. Of course it's a cost. The reverse logistics is expensive. But there's an environmental cost. As I mentioned, we've seen those images of discarded clothing on beaches in Ghana. We know that 3% of all returned items cannot be resold. That's quite a small percentage when you think about it, but going deeper into that, 50% of those items are sent immediately to landfill. There was lots of bad press kicking up about brands that I won't mention by name, of burning returns. And it was a luxury brand. This is all coming to the forefront, and consumers now are aware of it and know of it. 44% of consumers are trying out renting instead of buying. We're seeing consumers driven to reselling sites, 48%, massive growth for the likes of Vinted, for the Dpops of this world. eBay, the original marketplace for selling your unwanted clothing. The reason why this is so important is the British Fashion Council did a study in 2022, couldn't find any updated figures on this. 750,000 tonnes of CO2 is created by returns. 350,000 tonnes of CO2 comes from the reverse logistics. We all know retailers are trying to be better with delivery. We've got electric vans. We've just heard from Every. They're doing smarter, greener things, but how it's coming back, the space it's taking up in the warehouse and how much CO2 that generates. So this returns problem isn't simply just to make sure retailers are profiting from what they sell, but there's also a environmental and green aspect here. The full report, which there is a QR code to download on the next slide, has an interview with Currys and talking about refurbished tech. When we think about pre-loved, it's quite easy just to think about fashion, luxury handbags, second-hand clothing. But refurbished tech, the amount of energy and money that goes into building new tech, if we can get that working again and build an element of trust in tech and a guarantee that that tech is going to work, is a really interesting interview. I did it, so I think it's great, but it is worth a read, and something that is a factor. Is re-commerce a way to solve the returns problem? The reports didn't have any shiny charts or figures for this bit. The report also looks at using your data better, harnessing that returns data, how AI, machine learning can feed into that, and how it can go through the mountain of returns data that a person can't go through, and how that feeds into the wider supply chain. We had partners on the report, Loop are one of them, which is really handy. It will also have Blue Yonder and Enshift. They provide partner perspectives and can go into the tech, go into the data and the returns management platforms. You can access the full report using this QR codes or internetretailing.net. There's a lovely research and data tab, and that's got all of our sector reports and this one as well. But thank you so much for listening. If anybody has any questions, I believe we have a roaming mic. Yes, lady in the Barbie t-shirt, that's cool.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the returns and method of payment used. Because, for instance, when I work for an e-com company, what we saw is that some method of payment, like the pay later one, really increased the returns.
Yes.
And I think this is really part of a new consumer behavior.
Yes.
And so, I was just curious to know your take on that.
It's buy now, pay later is just a minefield. And that's, as we sort of mentioned, consumers want their money back instantly. But if that money's not even gone out of their account, they've got 3 months to pay it back and they've already sent it back. And I don't know how we stop it, but I think it's something that needs to be flagged, and it's a bit scary. Like, buy now, pay later and returns is really complicated and something I don't have an answer to, but it is a really good point. And yes, if serial returning is the problem that we're dealing with now, then how buy now, pay later fits in is just terrifying. Everybody all good? No more questions? Yay, thank you so very much.